After many years, a woodsman is able to perceive the mood of a forest through his ears. Whether it is the wind blowing through the trees, the chirping of birds, or the call of the owls. Some of these sounds are peaceful, some are full of fear. In much the same way, our own ears, attuned to the inflections of human speech, are able to detect deeper emotions in another. What happens when a fire burns through the forest? What voice do we hear then? Let us listen to first-year poet Max Gontarek.
How's it going, everybody? Okay, so the first couple of things I'm going to read come from a chapbook that I'm working on called Parkway, Bees, and Polemics. This is the first poem of that chapbook. 1. They say I died in the middle of praying at St. Patrick's old cathedral and most precious blood. The truth is, one man fell asleep and another itched his back. On my way out, I left a magic grow capsule in the holy water font. In a matter of minutes, a red foam dinosaur. Okay. So this is a sequence that happens later. That was number 1, so now we're to 9. So, 9. Every day it is almost dark and I am on foot. I stand on a corner and wait for the light to change and wait for spring to end. Red is always first, then headlights, and then taillights. The closer I am to you, the further we are from words. 10. That it rained all night meant nothing. Things never fell in the same way after we carried the baby sparrow in a sandwich bag and looked for a place to bury it. No one spoke, the host, the guest, the ants on the peonies. 11. I taped my handlebars red, passed through the streets I once searched for you when you were lost, passed through tulip gardens without seeing tulips, passed through spring at a loss. At home, the pipes lift the white paint, the affliction. For a moment, they hold a universal solvent instead of gas and piss and water. Its secret is emptiness, they say. Loss is its own gain. I try to vomit over the side of the deck. Instead, a life craft comes out, lands in the gutter, floats upstream without me. Was it for this the day grew tall? Now and then, in the flat pools, I become a supplicant. But when I arrive, I find that my head is only the place of my skull, that my mind is only the skull pan of my head. Okay, so this is 19. The spiny orison evolved in self-defense over centuries. Not much has changed about this. Don't you understand there is no way to that grade just over the river that does not destroy the river? You can walk to the bridge, you can listen to the rill, you can hold out your arms for what strength they have, but there's no two ways about it. To reduce greening angels to moss and then to nothing. 20. I will miss the mother who scolded me for leaving shears on the ladder and her son for walking under. It wasn't until I was older that he aimed his invisible rifle at me through the window. There are straight lines, but there are no connections. The cicada dies by the side of its empty shell, and far beyond this range is the simulacrum. You can see it for miles. Sand and the children are in love. They were talking about it before daylight, though they began to love without knowing it. By the time I arrive, where I've been won't matter. I wonder, when did he begin to love me? When did I find myself on the hidden river, next to a red canoe floating on my back? Okay, so now this is some newer stuff. This poem was inspired by something that Emil Shorin wrote, and he said, glum sky, my mind masquerading as the firmament. So this poem is called Firmament. Ringlet, Near the tree line, wet muskeg and bog, the larva overwinters twice before becoming. Along hind wings hashed in a fine black and white line, passing through white-centered eye spots, hungry for light, through fed trees shining from a little fire. Night, in all directions bringing down, holding water straight as a candle. Shadows thrown, delivered from self, gather in a net to be eaten. Into the present of leaves are taken in series back to the limb. Isle. At the end, portal and backwater. Land is just arriving at a black rowboat. Quiet ice cupping bank, folding back into water. Cypress turns to sky, coffin turns to garlands. Even the earth is hard, rooted in the bough since beginning. Cone. On all sides disintegrating, bearing seeds, float to shore from flood, and are dropped in their scales to O horizon. Here also, as become stars, allowed deliverance, putting up shoots or sowing nothing, shining wet, eventide, shedding one by one light. So this is my last thing. It's a pair of poems. The first one is called Helicoid, and the second one is called Roughhouse. A helicoid is something I recently found out about. It's one of three minimal surfaces, so there's a plane, a carotenoid, and a helicoid. But what's cool about the helicoid is that it's like this spirally thing, but it can glide on itself, so it's completely self-sustaining. So yeah. Helicoid. On western wind descending through a world bent into morning, too soon from closing time, blue eyes. Asleep and unpoliced, then gone to the water. Oil floats by. Without graces that keep all his goings graces, your man in the sand, let your hands keep making him there. Okayed and collected, rocks still fill in her dress, not the pail, not conduit dusk, empty and wrung. When is now? Then where has she gone? Roughhouse. Eastern star, animated like the first horses for no other reason than could we shut our eyes and walk in the way, live a stream in cloud life in the physical desert, stick our necks out to the apple in the young master's hand and still think that's as good as if trumpets horse played, a name for the air and nothing so sure that we'd lay odds that we at all differ from each other, sequencing through together the morning blinds. Thank you.